2 languages and a meme that I don't know, we eventually get to the Rangoon Mother, which is a fantastic fade-in to our new episode. Should we do it?
Sure, why not?
Okay, then we have started. Hello, everyone. I'm Kaki.
I'm Kay, and welcome to another episode of which we still haven't got a name for these, have we?
Oh, no, you're right. You're right. Oh, I have an idea. It's a deep cut. Let's see if you get it. Anslem. Does anyone get that?
Anslem. It sounds vaguely familiar, but...
Okay, so I'm doing a very deep pull, which is from the season 4 episode of Deep Space Nine, The Visitor, which is an amazing episode, where we see old Jake Sisko.
Oh.
Who has written 1 volume of short stories, and I think that volume is called Anslem.
Okay.
As if these short stories that we're reading here are the one.
Oh, very nice.
Because he gets visited by, this literary fan, and she talks about how she sort of rationed out the stories.
Right, yes, it's a shame you never wrote anything else.
Yes, because he was doing other things.
Oh, right.
Much like I did with Ted Chiang's A Story of You and Other Stories,
okay.
Upon which Arrival was based.
Ah, very good.
I think excellent film. Sorry, yes, anyway. We're doing a story reading.
Yes, today's story is Hunting Hound.
We can say it with that level of sort of surprise that's completely unfeigned because we kind of don't know.
No, Chief picked this story out for us and literally follow the link, click it open to the trusty archive of our own.org.
Yes, what
where we find this
wonderful resource. And who's it by?
It is by Leah. Lee, I think it's pronounced. Yes. Leah. It's spelled Lee, L-E-A-H.
So
I think
might be Leah.
Lee, yes. It is a general audience reading, no archive warnings apply. It's in the category male, fandom Star Trek Enterprise, relationship, Malcolm Reed and Charles Trip Tucker III. Oh, it's Enterprise. Very good.
It says right there in the fandom section as well. And there's additional tags for A Night in Sickbay. Okay, so
we did.
Yes,
on
that's
the show,
right.
Yes.
That's the one where Archer just has a real bad day.
Oh, yes, it is, yes.
Although perhaps not as bad as Porthos, because he...
Oh, well, yes.
He does get suspended in liquid.
He does turn into a stuffed dog at some point, so...
Yes, that's terrifying. That was absolutely terrifying. I'm curious about this.
So, yes, it's part from the Warp 5 Complex collections, which I'm not entirely sure what that is, but it's... And the summary of the story is Tucker and Reed hunt for a hound.
Oh, here we go. There's a note from Kylie Lee, the archivist. This story was originally archived at Warp 5 Complex, the software of which ceased to be maintained and created a security hazard. To make future maintenance and archive growth easier, I began importing its works to the AO3 as an Open Doors approved project in August 2016. This is awesome.
Yeah.
I emailed all the creators about the move and posted announcements, but I may not have reached everyone. If you are or know this creator, please contact me using this email. Oh, that's awesome.
I always have a admiration for people who work on archiving material, both physically and digitally. I mean, digitally, we probably even need it more than physical because, people say, like, oh, no, digital lasts forever. Yes, until, hard disks die and...
digital rot.
Exactly. Discord servers become unmanaged.
Yes.
That's going to be a big loss of information happening.
Yes, I have similar concerns about, Mastodon instances, but, which problems would you like to have?
Very good point.
This problem I actually recognize. I suspect, I used to run a fiction archive, or I hosted one with the e-fiction platform because it was optimized for, fan fiction archives and that also I had to shut down because e-fiction ceased to be supported. Didn't have the technical knowledge to do a migration of my own. And yes, it was a security hazard to anyone who used it. Probably a similar situation on Warp 5.
There's another author's note. Happy birthday, Sarah. Here's another birthday challenge fic for you. Sure as heck not mine, and the idea for the story came from the first person on the list who mentioned that Flux made a joke about the chameleon's gland making the beagle able to change color. Thanks for the inspiration. I also threw the Hunter's Moon challenge for the hell of it. My use of sticks and stones as a children's rhyme was actually independent of Dinash's use of it in an excellent birthday fic. Hopefully it's a case of great minds thinking alike or something. Sorry I couldn't fit all the challenge elements, but at least it stars Trip and Malcolm.
All right.
And there's more notes at the end of the work. So...
yes, let's... Do we have a music for...
we can just...
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Warp into it.
Trip and Malcolm made their way cautiously down the darkened crew quarters of Enterprise. Malcolm in the lead. They were both carrying flashlights, swinging beams of light back and forth along the corridor, making sure to point them at the ground. They both walked quietly, their bodies tense, alert for the slightest sound.
Trip began.
Shh, Malcolm hissed, at the same time, amazingly. Without turning, he had instantly raised a hand to stop the commander from speaking.
Oh, come on, Malk, Trip said. We're not hunting for Suliban here. You can leave off with the special ops stuff, okay?
I kind of imagine that Malcolm is doing like multi-gesture, like hand gestures that he's written down, but he hasn't emailed to anyone because it's all super secure.
Yes.
Malcolm swung around, crossing his arms and glaring. His flashlight beam shone up the wall to the curve of the ceiling. Okay, I'm going to have to do... So Malcolm has British accent. I already have a basic British accent. And how do you expect me to find him, Commander, if you won't keep quiet for 2 bleeding seconds?
I told you how, Malk, Trip glared back. If you just let me go to the galley and get some cheese.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Malcolm answered sarcastically. I'd forgotten your brilliant plan, letting the captain come back to an invisible dog with explosive diarrhea, as opposed to merely a dog he can't say.
Porthos ain't invisible, Trip insisted.
Now you're going American pirate. It's so tempting, isn't it?
He's just blending in with the shadows. His fur's grown darker, that's it. That's all. I was just trying for like the basically the drawl that I used for John back in the early days.
yes, of Farscape.
Yes.
And I'm trying to stick with Dick Van Dyke
right.
from Mary Poppins, but I can't stick it. It's too elusive. Thank you so much for the distinction, Commander. Malcolm snarked back. He gestured at the darkness in the corridor around him. I might as well be invisible for all the luck we've had finding him. He turned around before Trip could answer, shaking his head disgustedly. He began marching at a faster pace down the corridor, swinging the light beam left and right. You just had to let him off the lead, didn't you?
Hey, Trip said to Malcolm's back, walking faster to keep up with him. He'd been stuck in sickbay for near 48 hours. What was I supposed to do?
Keep him off the lead, Malcolm snarled. Now shut up. I'm trying to listen.
Poor guy was dying to go for a run, Mac, Trip continued. How was I supposed to know he could change his color?
Quiet, Malcolm said, holding up his hand again. Both men stopped dead. Malcolm slowly moved his flashlight beam. He was almost whispering. I thought I heard something.
I hear it too, Trip said just as quietly. Sounded like water?
Malcolm's flashlight beam traveled along the wall to his right, highlighting a dark shadow, a beagle-shaped shadow, and the gentle curve of water that was quickly forming a small puddle on the floor.
Porthos! Trip yelled. He lunged at the animal, crashing to his knee, but the little dog dodged left and took off. The shadow shape disappeared into the heavier shadows along the corridor. Damn! Trip swore. I think I just got dog piss on my knee.
Malcolm was far ahead of him, boots ringing as he pounded after the dog. Trip heard him yelling, Porthos! Porthos! But only Malcolm's silhouette was visible against the beam from his flashlight. Then Trip heard something like, Oh, stop, you miserable flea bag! And saw the flashlight go crashing in one direction, the silhouette another. There was a very loud noise.
Trip ran the rest of the distance to the lieutenant. He found Malcolm lying on his back, arms akimbo. The flashlight was rolling in an arc pattern by the left wall. Porthos was nowhere in sight. Trip bent to look at Malcolm, who was groaning with his eyes closed. So, okay, he says arms akimbo. So I recently learned that arms akimbo actually means you with your fists planted in your hips, not with legs akimbo, which is legs spread.
Well, it's the spreading of your arms, like your elbows are wide, elbows are akimbo.
Oh,
right,
okay.
And you rest your fists like that.
Right.
But yes, legs akimbo, the joke from...
The theatre group from... What was it again?
League of Gentlemen.
League of Gentlemen. Yes, that's the one.
Royce and Vasey. Good grief, they're getting deeper and deeper. You okay?
I think I broke my nose.
Trip had to clench his jaw hard to keep from laughing. Oh, I think it's Malcolm who broke his nose.
Right, yes.
That's it, he said, using his flashlight to find the nearest wall panel. Turning on the lights.
No, Malcolm said. He had rolled into a sitting position, both hands gingerly steepled on either side of his nose. Don't touch it. You really want the beta shift to know what we're doing down here?
Trip hesitated, fingers just touching the panel keys. He turned back to Malcolm, barely able to make out the pained expression in the near darkness. We'll have a lot better luck finding him, he said.
It's not worth it, Malcolm said. He shook his head, hands and all. Travis is up there. We'll never live it down.
Trip thought about that, then dropped his hand. Damn! He saw that Malcolm had finally let his nose go and was struggling to his feet. You don't have to help, you know, he said quietly. I mean, you're right. This is my fault. You shouldn't be stuck trying to help me find Porthos.
He could just make out Malcolm's pained smile. Hang for a lamb, hang for a sheep, he said. No point in backing out now.
Thanks, Tripp said, meaning it. He sighed. Okay, so what do we do?
Now it was Malcolm who walked through the panel. We'll call in the big guns, he said. He pressed a comm button with his thumb. Malcolm read to Hoshi Sato.
There was a pause while Tripp stared at Malcolm goggle-eyed. Then, "What is it, Lieutenant?" came back over the comm. Hoshi sounded remarkably awake and alert considering the hour. Tripp blinked, automatically turning his head so his ear was closer to the panel. Was that giggling in the background?
We have a delicate situation here, Malcolm said smoothly, and we require your particular expertise. He moved his thumb and waited for Hoshi's answer.
Now? Hoshi didn't usually sound so petulant, and that was definitely giggling, and something that sounded suspiciously like a moan. Ooh!
Tripp pulled Malcolm aside, taking his place at the comm panel. Yes, now, he said, none too gently. Tuck it in, zip up, and get down, Ensign. That's an order. He thumbed the switch off smartly.
Tuck it in? Malcolm asked blandly, eyebrows raised. He shook his head and went back to the comm. We're on E-deck, by the way, he spoke into it. We would truly appreciate your help.
Fine, Hoshi said. She sounded like it was anything but. Thank you, Lieutenant, she said sweetly, for that gentlemanly request. You can tell the Chitsakop that I'll be right down. The comm cut off.
Tripp turned to Malcolm. What did she say?
Malcolm was busy checking the flashlight. Flashlight. Oops.
Hey, tuck it in and zip it up, okay?
Whoopsie. There goes my dyslexia again.
Sure, blame it.
Oh, of course. Malcolm was busy checking the flashlight. He sniffed a few times, rubbed his nose. It was in German.
I know that, Tripp said. You told me you speak some.
Ah, said Malcolm. He started down the corridor again, still rubbing his nose. Not anymore.
Yeah, well, Tripp groused. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me.
Malcolm glanced back at him, his face half in shadow. Especially when you don't know what the words mean.
Oh, shut up.
They met Hoshi at the turbo lift, which was the one area that was well lit even at this hour. The ensign was wearing pink pajamas, a robe, and fluffy bunny slippers. Her hair was unbound, lying messily around her shoulders. She gave Tripp a look that could have curdled milk, then turned and smiled at Malcolm.
You said you needed my expertise, Lieutenant. She stifled a yawn, then smiled brightly at him before she glared at Tripp again.
Rather, Malcolm said. He sniffed, checked just under his nose for blood, not finding any, he continued. We've lost Porthos.
Hoshi looked at him incredulously. Why do you need my help? The ship's not that big. Did he get into a turbo lift or something?
No, Malcolm explained quickly. It actually, well, he paused, obviously unsure of how to continue.
The dog's invisible, Tripp put in. That cure the doc gave him, it kind of made him into a chameleon beagle.
A beagle chameleon, Malcolm suggested.
Hoshi just looked at both of them. You're insane.
I wish, Malcolm sighed. He gingerly touched his nose, then winced. Unfortunately, we're both in possession of our faculties, just not in possession of the captain's dog.
Hoshi squinted up at him. What's wrong with your nose?
It's fine, Malcolm said quickly.
He banged it trying to catch Porthos, Tripp explained.
Hoshi looked quizzically from the red and swollen bridge of Malcolm's nose to Tripp face. Why didn't you just turn on the lights?
That's not the point, Hoshi, Malcolm said. His voice was still gentle. His voice was still gentle in spite of how I made it sound, but Tripp could tell his patience had just about totally eroded. The point is the dog is invisible and we can't see him. We need your help, specifically, your exceptional hearing.
Let me get this straight, guys, Hoshi said. She put her hand to her forehead and closed her eyes. Okay, Porthos is lost, and you can't find him because you can't see him in the dark?
Tripp and Malcolm looked at each other. Close enough. Bingo, Tripp said.
So we need you to listen for him, Malcolm added.
Hoshi blinked at the two of them. How long did it take you to earn your ranks? She shook her head, waving a hand dismissively before either man could respond. Never mind. She flattened her lips as she thought. Wait here.
Malcolm and Tripp turned, watching wordlessly as Hoshi padded away back the way they come in her hunt for Porthos. Her bunny slippers made the barest slapping noise against the deck. She glanced...
She's getting farther away now.
Right, no, I figured. I'm just waiting for her to get out of earshot. She glanced at the doors to the crew quarters as she passed, then stopped at one and hit the chime. Bing bong.
Malcolm glanced at Trip, and then at the ensign. Hoshi?
Hoshi ignored him. A moment later, the door slid open, and a very sleepy Stephanie Cormack was standing there, curly hair all frizzed. She was wearing bright pink pajamas that were almost glowing in the light coming from her room.
I wonder if we're supposed to know Stephanie Cormack. Or maybe that's a character from another fanfiction.
Possible.
You know, those communities.
Yeah.
Hiya, Hoshi, she said, rubbing an eye with a sleeve. Something wrong? She yawned widely. Liz all right?
Oh, she's great. Hoshi smiled. I'm really sorry to wake you, but I need something from your room.
Sure, Stephanie said. She stepped aside to let Hoshi in. The door slid shut again before Trip or Malcolm could hear any more of their conversation.
Cormac got dog catching equipment? Trip asked Malcolm.
Nothing official, Malcolm shrugged. Do you suppose Liz?
Trip raised his eyebrows, waggling them suggestively. Oh, maybe Hoshi's just looking for something for later.
Ooh. Malcolm was about to answer when Hoshi slipped out of Cormac's quarters, looking over her shoulder as she gave her thanks. Then, ignoring the two men, she went to the nearest wall panel.
No, Malcolm cried, starting forward. Don't!
Hoshi hit a switch and the lights went on, flooding the corridor in brilliance. Trip and Malcolm grimaced, slapping their palms over their eyes.
Hoshi, Malcolm groaned.
Ow! Trip was groaning too. Ow, damn it, I'm blind!
Porthos, come here. Porthos, that's a good boy.
Malcolm let his eyes open to slits, peeking through his fingers. Hoshi was kneeling in the corridor, practically cooing as she called the dog.
Here, boy.
She was proffering something in her hand.
Here, boy, Hoshi called again. Here, Porthos, treat.
Treat? Trip asked. He rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands. Where'd she get...
Oh, no, Malcolm exclaimed as his eyes widened.
They heard the sound of little paws scuffing over metal deck, and suddenly Porthos was right there, coming from the opposite end of the corridor. He was completely visible again, looking as normal and cute as a dog ever could as he trotted to Hoshi with his tail wagging. His whole body wiggled with delight as he gobbled up the cheese she was holding out to him.
That's a good boy, Hoshi gushed. She scooped up the little dog, then walked purposely towards the other two officers. She thrust Porthos into Malcolm's arms without all stopping, and then stalked towards the turbo lift. You're going to owe me one, guys. She didn't even bother to look behind her as she spoke.
Trip and Malcolm watched her get into the turbo lift. Well, Trip coughed a little. That was easy.
Indeed, Malcolm said. He turned and lifted Porthos into Trip's arms. You might want to take him to sickbay, Commander. Malcolm smiled thinly. That looked like a lot of cheese.
Trip's eyes widened, and he swallowed. Oh, jeez. He glanced behind him. What about the pea?
Malcolm just kept smiling, patted him on the shoulder. I have every faith in your resourcefulness. I, on the other hand, am going to bed. Sleep well, Commander. He paused to scratch Porthos between the ears. The dog burped and seemed to be blending in with the blue of Trip's uniform. You might want to keep him contained, Malcolm said brightly. He turned and headed for the turbo lift as well, leaving Trip standing with an increasingly blue-furred dog.
Porthos burped again, then farted.
Trip just closed his eyes like he was in pain. The comm beeped behind him.
Travis Mayweather to Commander Tucker.
Trip took a deep breath, then turned back to the comm panel and punched one of the keys. Trip here.
Are you on E-Deck, sir? Travis asked. All the lights suddenly went on down there. Is something happening?
Trip leaned his head against the wall. Porthos barked happily, then burped again. If I said no, would you believe me?
Probably not. Travis sounded amused.
I didn't think so. Trap shut the comm off and started walking towards the turbo lift. Porthos was bright blue now, with a red stripe running through his face where his head was touching the piping of Trip's uniform.
Oh, neat! Porthos's blue tail was thumping with happiness. He'd had great cheese, marked his territory, eaten cheese, and been held by the female with a nice voice. If only his human were here and his tummy wasn't rumbling quite so much, this would be the best day of his life. Aww.
Notes. Minor updates were made to this previously archived fic on date 4th of October 2024, or maybe the 8th of March 2024. For better legibility and visibility to future readers, if you are the author of this fic, please contact the Wolf Archivist to claim this fic or facilitate further maintenance or updates.
That's adorable. I like these little sort of slice of life. I've always wanted to know more about the logistics of having a dog on board a spaceship.
Right, yeah.
He's got to have a little, like, just a little lawn, right?
Right.
Just for the business.
You see those sometimes in airports. A little room with,
right.
with a little doggy bathroom room.
Yeah.
Also, I mean, they clearly, as a tactical officer, I would have expected better of Malcolm.
I know.
Because, you know, you can, like, use cheese to lure the dog and then just not give it to him.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a level of guile that they don't seem, but they're so gullible. Like the Enterprise folks back in those days, they're just these good old boys, and they just don't know they're bumbling around the universe. Oh, that was a lovely story. So thank you very much to Leah or Lee and the Warp 5 complex that maybe one day we'll learn more about.
And stop the cat from scratching the back of my chair.
Yeah, good luck with that. Have you tried cheese on her? Does that work?
Oh, she loves cheese.
Are there consequences?
I don't know. I've never given her enough to find that. I have to get to that point.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining us for another story reading here on The Joy of Trek. It was nice to delve into Enterprise.
Yes. I think we have a message from the chief, a synopsis for the end of the recording.
Yes, because next week we're going to be diving into the next episode of Star Trek, which is Chief.
The next episode of Star Trek we'll be discussing is Voyager 224 Tuvix, followed by Our Man Paris of Troy by Social Permadeath as a fanfiction reading in which a holodeck malfunction leaves Tom Paris in an Our Man Bashir of his own, playing the part of Paris of Troy in the third book of the Iliad, and visions of his crewmates as various parts of the Greek epic.
Wow, that's wild. That's a lot. I mean, when it said Paris of Troy, I thought maybe, is maybe a double holodeck episode that actually Diana?
It is a holodeck episode, but
good gravy, that's a lot of hats on top of one another. I'm very curious about that.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us, and we shall see you next week.
That leaves us with one more thing to do.
The hell is this?
I'm leaving Starfleet.
Energize!
We hope you've enjoyed this week's episode with your friends Kay and Kaki, production and editing by Chief Engineer Greg, and music by Fox Amor. Join us next week for Tuvix, Voyager 224, followed by the fanfiction reading Our Man Paris of Troy by Social Permadeath. Visit joyoftrek.com/links to send us your recommendations, support us on Patreon, or to find us on Blue Sky. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening to The Joy of Trek, and we'll see you out there.